never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to my Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today is another fantastic day for an interview, and I'm indeed honored to have Sarah Lebel here with me. Sarah is a woman who has gone through hell and back and kept going, and is now out there to make this world truly a better place by highlighting the risks and the problems that many, especially women, but also men or transgender people feel out there. And we're talking about human trafficking. We're talking about modern slavery. And you think, oh, come on, what the hell? It's just a few cases here and there. No, guys, we're going to share a bit of reality with you out there and share that it is actually a fate that applies to millions and millions of wretched souls. And so it's going to be a deep dive into this topic, and it's going to be quite a brutal topic. So guys, bit of a trigger warning there, but we need to talk about these things. You out there might actually be aware of people around you who maybe fall into that category. And by us raising awareness with you, maybe it empowers you to help others. So here we go. Sarah, I'm so grateful that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor. And side note, I should have you start writing my little snippets of bios for me. That was great.
Oh, no, it is. It is. I mean, here are you. I mean, what bigger ovaries can you have than you actually saying, you see, I want to say balls, but sorry, it doesn't apply.
Right, yeah.
You're going out there and saying, yes, I've been trafficked. Mm-hmm. So let's talk. And come on, that's a showstopper there. And that's beautiful. But I mean, you never grew up and when you were 8 years old and you think, well, you know what? I think one day I will be famous and go on to shows, etc. Who did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Oh my gosh. So it changed a lot. So I initially, every kid dreams of like being a rock star, like, famous in some way. So I had this idea, like, I don't know if you remember Gem, but it was an old cartoon from the 80s. I was like, I want to do that. Then I decided I wanted to do hair. Then I went through a phase where I just really wanted to work in an office and like just carry papers around. And I don't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I just loved the idea of like being corporate.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just shows we never know really what will happen to us in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. If you had told me back then that I would be doing my corporate day job, but then also sharing my story and even having lived this story to share, never would have believed you ever.
Oh dear. So how was school for you?
You mean like in my younger years or college?
Yeah. Well, both.
Yeah. So I grew up very typical middle class, like Southern California. Parents were together, the 2.3 kids or whatever they say, that classic ratio. But it was good. I was like straight A student, honor roll, like very much people pleaser and the good kid, right? Like my parents would tell me something and you better believe I was going to go full force.
Okay.
So, it wasn't until my later teen years that I started dabbling with drinking and, you go out to parties and try some drugs here and there. But, I went to a private Baptist school for high school and junior high. So force fed a lot of religion. But I struggled a lot with that, like Christian guilt kind of thing with everything that I did. It was like, oh my gosh, am I going to go to hell? Like, this is horrible. But then I got over that.
Yeah, exactly. May I ask you, when you were first exposed to alcohol, who did you turn into? What did the alcohol give you that you had not had in your life?
So I should add that I was really shy as a kid. Like I was that kid, I would go to birthday parties, even as a small child. And like, it's almost like the energy of the room and the energy of the people was overwhelming to me. And so once I tried alcohol, it was like, oh, a little
Exactly.
looser. I'm a little more talkative. I feel more confident. Yeah.
Same here. Same here. Exactly
Yep.
the same. Oh dear. And therefore, it is, that is the pitfall, because alcohol and drugs and certain behaviors do give us something. They relieve us from some tension. They sometimes take away the pain. In your case, there wasn't actually so much pain there, but intrinsically you were sort of an empath, a shy person, and suddenly you were more outgoing. Oh, hello, alcohol, bring it on.
Yeah, this feels good.
Okay, so Baptist church, and what does a Baptist girl do when she wants to really rebel? Oh, she's going out with boys. How did that go?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But even then, like the Christian guilt with dating and stuff. I mean, I was a prude in high school, which,
all right.
It was, and I think it was also partially because of insecurities. It was like, ooh, what if they don't like me?
Oh, okay.
I know.
Okay. So what happened then?
So, it wasn't really until my early 20s that life really started to spiral out of control. I had been in a relationship and we had just broken up, and I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, crap, what do I do? And at the time, so I went to school for fashion. I went to the Fashion Institute in LA, and I was working in fashion. So my income wasn't stable. I was freelance. Like I really struggled with what's the right decision to do here. And ultimately I decided to have an abortion. I was like, this is a responsible thing. And God bless my ex-boyfriend who was there through all of it. While we were making that decision together, every night he would come over with hot meals and like whatever you need. He's great. Still a great friend of mine today. Really good person. Yeah. But I had the abortion, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's a couple of different ways that you can have abortions. There's like, and I hate to get graphic here, but there's like, the in office, I hate calling it a vacuum. That sounds so terrible, but
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But there's also a pill that you can take. So they give you one pill in the office and one pill when you get home. And essentially it like forces a miscarriage in a sense. And what I wasn't prepared for was the pain. My God. B, just almost like the brutality of it. It was horrible. It was horrible. Something that it's hours long process, and you're just like, oh my God, what am I doing right now? It was horrific. So they did give me pain pills for that. I go back to the doctor for a checkup, and they're like, it didn't fully work. You have to do it again. I was like, you've got to be kidding with me. Like,
wow. Okay.
What? It was horrific. So of course they gave me more pain pills, and that's when things spiraled out of control for me. They gave me these opiates, and physically I felt great. Nothing hurt, but emotionally I was able to numb myself in a way that it was like all the pain was gone. And, I was living in LA. Everybody knows somebody who they can call up and be like, hey, do you have some pills? Like, can I buy some off you? And it was very easy to continue to feed my addiction. And what I didn't know at the time is how physically dependent I had gotten on them. So you try to stop, and all of a sudden you're kicked full force into detox. And it's like, I don't have time for this right now. So I'm just gonna ride this out a little longer, and I'll figure it out. And that became this like mantra in my head. Like, I'm going to figure it out. It's just, there's too much going on with work. There's too much going on in life, and I don't have time to detox. And the few times that I tried, it's so physically painful that it's like, screw this. I'm not doing this. Like, again, I'll figure this out another time. And that's when everything really went to hell in a handbasket. So my life very quickly deteriorated. I was able to kind of keep the secret for a long time. Like, people didn't realize how bad it was. But, after a while, like my boss at the time was a recovering addict, and he's like, something's not right. I see it. And God bless him, he tried to sit me down and have a conversation with me about it. And I was like, no, I think I'm just depressed. Like, because the shame, right? Like, who wants to admit I've spiraled out of control and I don't know how to stop this. And I ended up losing my job. My car got repoed. My landlord kicked me out. I was officially homeless, like officially had nowhere to go, just bag of clothes on my back. And so, I would find random friends to crash with and just kind of bebop around. And next thing you know, you're hanging out with like worse and worse people. And it's like every step you take, like it's such a slow progression. I think about those people that I was around now and I'm like, oh my God, like that's insane. But it was such a slow progression of like, well, this person's not that bad. And they're a friend of so-and-so. So they're probably okay. But, essentially my family had enough of my crap. They were like, God bless them. They were trying to do Al-Anon because they knew I was not okay. But, they're like, you can't stay here. And I know my family has so much regret over that now because of what happened. But they also, in the same sense, were doing the right thing. They were doing the best they could with what they were learning in the rooms. So anyway, I went to a party one night and had a drink and it was lights out. Like that was it. I had been drugged and was continuously drugged for weeks, months after. And essentially was just kind of passed from human to human, who unbeknownst to me, like I was getting purchased, which is mind blowing. But that's really how it all kind of came together. It was, an unfortunate situation. I carried a lot of sadness from the abortion in general, and the opiates just numbed all of that pain for me. And you always think that you've got this and you've got a handle on it. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh my God, how did I get here? Like, what is going on?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How long did that period last?
Just a couple months, fortunately. My family they're like pit bulls, very protective of one another. So
nice.
my mom had called one of my aunts, who then called another one of my aunts, whose husband is a former Marine. And he was like, we're getting her. But it was great. I'll never forget this moment. So the last house that I was in, he had this insane camera system. And so I could watch like everything happening outside the house, inside the house. And I was sitting on the couch one day and this black SUV keeps driving by. And I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be great if it was someone for me, like coming to get me? And lo and behold, my family had hired a private investigator who dug into the guy whose house I was at, who reached out to law enforcement. They said, holy crap, like we have to go today. We have to go right now. Like the person that she's with, like she could be dead in 24 hours. So it was for me. And classic, like something you would picture in a movie, like it's surreal, like all the cop cars pull up and, I'm escorted out, nothing but like a giant t-shirt and like these giant stripper heels that I had because they were the only shoes I had. But I remember seeing my family outside and I hadn't seen them in years. And I've never ran so fast in my life. It's like, I'm out. Like, okay, time to start over. What are we doing? Like, just get me out of here. Yeah, it was intense.
Fuck me. Oh, wow. What to say? What to say? I mean, from a doctor's point of view, from a medical point of view, I mean, you see that kind of beautiful, I don't know, Hollywood rescue happening.
Right.
But the story doesn't stop there. The story only just begins.
Yeah.
On both
oh, yeah.
a mental way, a mental perspective, but also often enough on a very physical way. The people who look after you during that time are not the nicest. So many women end up raped, physically torn, physically infected with sexual transmitted diseases. There's a whole range of problems that are potentially there. And I don't want to be now too graphic, but there is quite an incidence of severe chronic pelvic pain after such episodes. So there are a lot of things that were potentially on the cards for you.
Yep.
How did that play out?
So, in addition to all of that, the drugs that I was being given, it was mostly GHB, which is like the classic date rape drug. And the beauty of it for me is that I don't remember a lot of the details. But
Nice.
when I left that house, I mean, I was covered in bruises. It was brutal. And again, because of those drugs, mentally, it was like, I didn't know what was real anymore, right? Like reality was so skewed, and I felt like I couldn't trust anybody. Like certain smells would trigger me. Like there were so many things happening that I didn't understand. And fortunately for me, I did get a clean bill of health. I didn't contract anything during that time, which is shocking. But yeah, I mean, the body remembers all of it, right? So I'm having these reactions to my trauma and going,
Exactly.
what the hell is happening right now? Like why? And to this day, I know when I'm stressed because my hips tighten up, and that's my first indicator if I'm stressed. And it's something that's stuck with me for the last, 15, 20 years since all this happened, that it's like, okay, something's up. My body's trying to tell me something right now, like slow down and listen. But God bless my family, because they really tried to rehabilitate me themselves. Like they moved me from LA out to Georgia to stay with them, like just separate you from everything, take your phone. And the really horrible thing about all of it is that when I left, there was this piece of me that was like almost like Stockholm syndrome, like where it was like, okay, it was a horrible situation, but in my head, it was like I had a roof over my head. I wasn't on the streets, and there was this weird pull that I kept having, like emotionally, towards this horrific human being. And that was really hard to reconcile too, that like, it took a lot of treatment and doctors to be like, this is normal. Like it's okay. Considering your circumstances. But I had so much to unwind mentally that it was so hard. Like that first couple years after leaving LA and coming out to Georgia was just a constant, like, who am I? What happened? What's real?
Exactly.
It was
Wow.
horrible. It was horrible.
Wow. So that's interesting that they use GHB, and I'm not surprised about that at all. GHB, often enough in the victim, breaks down all the boundaries. And often there is actually a paradoxical kind of sexual behavior there, and they're very outgoing, like you actually having no trouble making love with free men.
Right.
And seemingly enjoying it. So it's the ideal track, unfortunately, that has been used for these circumstances. To a certain degree, the sheer fact that they didn't continue with the opiates was actually a blessing, because you actually went through detox whilst you were there.
You're correct. Yes, you're correct. By the time I got out to Georgia, I was like, oh, well, I guess that's a weird silver lining. I had gone through detox unbeknownst to me. So.
Hey, fuck! It's brutal, the whole thing as it sort of happened. Wow, your parents are amazing. Your family is amazing. They held together because they truly hated the addiction, but they loved the addict. Yes. And that is the most beautiful thing that one can hear. Oh, wow. And again, then thereafter to hear you saying, hey, I was this empty shell of a woman. Right. Who am I? I experienced exactly the same thing after I went into rehab. I was empty. I had been defining myself as a pain physician for such a long time. I only could define myself in my work. I could define myself in my dreams, in the alcoholic fused dreams. But then thereafter, when I was forced to calm down or stop the manic kind of lifestyle I was living, to now say, okay, who am I? I had no answer. For me, it was actually an intriguing time, because it was an empty canvas. I could paint anything on that canvas. So I started exploring. What kind of explorations did you do? Who did you become in those early years?
So let me preface by saying that after spending a few months with my aunt and uncle, I was like, I need to go somewhere. I need inpatient, get me into a halfway house. Like I've got to completely reset. And while I was in treatment, they did a lot of art therapy, and I've always loved painting. I've always loved writing. Like I'm very creative in that sense. And I had neglected that for so long. Right. And so getting back in there, like I still every year make vision boards. And it was something I picked up in treatment, that it's like, okay, intentions, like set your intentions. And, and then I picked up running again. Like I really tried to tap into those parts of myself that I had neglected. And it was an interesting and almost like safe endeavor doing that, right? To lean back into something like from childhood that felt really safe and fulfilling. And, the great thing about art and writing is that there's this tangible output, right? There's an outcome that you can look at and be like, wow, that's beautiful. And I'm happy with the work I just did. And it was like those small little things that helped me rebuild my self-esteem, because I was shot, right? There was, like you said, empty shell. There was nothing left in me. And I felt like crap. There's all that shame and self-blame and, but tapping into those creative parts of myself really opened up like, okay, there's a heart in here. And there's a woman who is trying to figure things out and doing the best that she can. But I did something today and it was creative and it's beautiful and I love it.
Wow. That's beautiful. I started baking cheesecakes.
I love it.
I always had this kind of saying, there is not enough cheesecake in this world. That was something to say, hey, this world needs more help. And I actually took that literally. I learned how to bake a proper German cheesecake. I wrote a book about baking German cheesecakes. It's the most
kidding.
I did, but it's the most horrible book because as a doctor, I wrote the encyclopedia of German cheesecakes. And then I thought, I better put some recipes in there. It's just shit. But it was me learning. It was me becoming creative. It was me becoming that new person. And so it is lovely to hear that you came back with your art. But then sooner or later, the money has to come back in. How was your path back into the workforce?
Yeah. So the treatment, so I did 2 stints in treatment. So we'll start with the first one. Because that's the beauty of every recovery story, right? It's never a smooth linear path. It's got all the bumps and spins and twirls.
No, really.
I know, right? The first treatment center that I was in, you had to get at a certain point, you had to get like your recovery job, right? So I did retail. I'd done retail in college and stuff. So I knew, okay, this I can do. And I really, I'm going to sound like such an egotistical jerk, but this is who I was at the time. But, I had worked in fashion and I had done all these great photo shoots and runway shows. And like in my head, it was like, I am somebody, like screaming to the world. Like, I promise you, I am somebody. So I was extremely obnoxious with like, let me tell you my stories about who I've met. And I look back now and I'm like, oh God, so gross. So the retail job was humbling, right? It was like, okay, cool. That's great that like you did all these great things, but you're like helping people find hiking shoes now. So
exactly.
That's making minimum wage. And that's where you're at right now. But I got out of treatment and I was staying with family again, and I had a family member who had a knee surgery and they left their pain pills on the counter. And I was like, I bet I could do just one, right? Because we all think that I've got this, I can do just one. And, it's like that phrase of, trying to chase the dragon. It was like, after having gone so long without it, when I took that pill, I was like, there's my best friend again, because I viewed my drugs as like my biggest supporter and my best friend. It's what comforted me through hard times and helped me forget about all the crappy things in my life. So it was like reacquainting with an old friend. And it was a downward spiral from there real quick. And again, it's amazing because here in Georgia, I only had friends that were in the recovery community. We'd go to meetings together, all that stuff. And it's like, you find that one person in the room who you know is a little, they're toeing the line. And it's amazing how quickly as an addict you can find whatever you want. It's baffling. We are a baffling breed at the end of the day. Like, just make it all come together.
That's what sniffer dogs.
Yeah,
you know exactly.
Exactly.
Well, on a good in a good from a good point of view, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. So you will recognize another addict a mile away, but equally, you will recognize another addict a mile away when you want it for the wrong purposes.
Yes,
oh my.
Exactly. So that was also very short-lived. And it, you know, I mean, you know,
why was it short-lived?
Well, because, you know, if you sit in enough meetings, you hear that like you go back out and you think that you can use the levels that you used to use and how quickly it just gets worse and worse and worse. And this one, I think I was back out for maybe 3 months, and it went from that one pill all the way to like, what's heroin like? I hear that's cheaper, right? I mean, it's that drastic and that quick. So I had reached a point where I was like, all right, I gotta pull it together. So I parked outside of a very well-known detox center here in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do X amount of this substance. And if it doesn't kill me, I'll go check myself in. If it does, then problem solved. Right. And I look back at that moment and what a pivotal moment, because in all the years that I have bought drugs, I've never gotten like a bad batch, you know, and it was a bad batch. Lucky for me. I was like, wow, I just did a lot of that and I don't feel anything. Crap. That means I got to follow through with this. Like, you know, those foxhole prayers of like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then it comes time and I'm like, oh God, I have to walk in the doors of that building. Like,
what? Sarah, you are so freaking lucky. Oh my God.
I know.
And when was that? You said it was about 20 years ago. So is that about right?
Yeah,
ballpark?
15 years ago, I came out to Georgia. So I'm turning 40 this year and I came out to Georgia when I was 25. So
25. So 15 years ago, we have got 2023 now. So 2008.
Sounds right.
The reason I did the maths is because the fentanyl epidemic really started 2014, thereabouts in the rave culture, and so and nowadays you have got the whole, oh my God, highly potent drugs. So terrifying. Whilst you had your last shot was a fizzer, that could have been the other way around. You could have had, you know, just a little bit, and a little bit kills you because it is so much more potent, because someone just sprinkled some fentanyl a bit over it, and God knows if there are hot spots where there's shitloads of fentanyl and then in others nothing. Oh my God. So I different story.
I have been watching more and more documentaries about this whole rise in fentanyl, and I thank my lucky stars every day that I am not an addict right now. It is terrifying.
Absolutely.
And you know, I know my experience and all that it led me to, right? Like I was trafficked. Like that's like the worst of the worst. But I mean, you see these documentaries and these people that are suffering with like this drug that like, they don't even know what they're putting in their system anymore. It's just, it's terrifying.
Man, you were lucky. You were so lucky. And
I was very, very lucky. But, so yeah, I walked in those doors and they were like, we don't have a bed for you. I was like, you dodged that bullet. But unbeknownst to me, a friend of mine was on the phone with my aunt and uncle here in Georgia going, something's up. We need to intervene. So as I'm leaving this hospital parking lot, I get a call from my family and they're like, you need to come over. We need to talk. I'm like, yeah, we do. And so it was like, all these things happening in the background, and it, you know, the universe is so wonderful, right? Because when the stars need to align, they align, and they aligned for me that day. And my aunt was so sweet. She was like, okay, I did all this research. And when was the last time you used? And like, you know, it's hour 6. So you're probably going to be feeling like this. And I mean, God bless her. But a bed opened up the next morning. So first thing in the morning, I went and started my detox process, which was horrible, horrible. horrible. And then I went into another treatment center after that.
Whilst it is horrible, it is a matter of, for most people, it's a matter of days and weeks. There is this there's this kind of delayed recovery. So there is, or delayed detox, shall I say, that can sometimes go on for weeks and months. That is not pretty. How long in reality was it for you, if you were to look back? Can you remember?
Oh, I honestly don't remember. I truly don't remember. The treatment center that I ended up going into was really interesting. It was a different one from the first one that I went to. And in that program, I was surrounded by some really like eclectic, unique, beautiful women who just like had such a spark and such a zeal that it made it really easy to not focus on like how I'm feeling.
Nice.
We were always doing stuff.
Were these other patients, or were these other inmates, as I call them, or were
inmates.
or were these also staff?
No. So it was, there were some staff members that were incredible, but it was, the other women that were in this treatment center, and they were just incredible. Like, I am very, very grateful that I landed with this group of women that I did. And, I made a decision. I was so terrified of relapsing again that I was like, I'm going to stay until they kick me out. And I did. I stayed for like a year and a half, and I just moved to their 3-quarter house. And finally, I remember telling my therapist there one day, I was like, I'm just so comfortable here. Like, I feel like I could just stay here forever. And she's like, that means you need to go. And I'm like, oh,
exactly. Now stop. I went 1 month rehab, and that was $27,000. So a year and a half, if I just quickly calculate that up, and that puts tears in my eyes. Is your family swimming in money?
So here's the cool thing about the program that I went to. It's a 90-day program, which God bless them for paying for that for me, because I certainly was not capable. But the halfway house situation, you had to go out and work, and you had to pay rent. And basically they taught you how to like be an adult again. Like you've got bills, you have to get your groceries, but you're living in this environment where you're still getting drug tested. Like,
Brilliant.
You're safe. There's staff there if you need to like talk if something comes up, and aftercare programs, right? Of like group therapy with other people who are venturing back out into the world and trying to figure out what's next. So yeah, rest assured, it was not a year and a half of $27,000.
Boy. Okay, cool. And even then, you could say, well, what is a life worth? But only those people who have worked really, really hard in their life and were able to accrue some money can really say that. So many other people that end up in your shoes, and there is no background. Right. I certainly came from very poor circumstances. So my parents could have not afforded that, and it had happened to me as a younger person. In all fairness, there are treatment centers out there. There are treatment places out there who are government funded, and sometimes they can be very, very good. There's just it all depends upon the heart of the people who are looking after you and their commitment to you. And I think that is where we all come full circle, because here you are now going out there and giving back to society. You are going out there and actually talking about your experiences, the lessons you had to learn the hard way, and hopefully now working not as the ambulance on the bottom of the cliff, but rather up there trying to build a fence that prevents the people actually falling down.
Exactly.
So I like that. I like that a lot. But here you were. So there was the first 2 years were chaotic. You were still sort of in and out of rehab. You were still that egotistical cow.
Yes.
Okay. We all have been there. What changed? How did your post-traumatic growth actually really got going?
So I got pregnant with my son. And I, at the time, was working. So after my second treatment stint, I got a job as like a front office manager. And basically kind of weaseled my way into marketing. Like, because I hated answering phones. I just hated the front desk stuff. So I would like, hey, if you need help with this project, like I can help. I'm teachable. I'm eager. Like, get me out of this desk. So I weaseled my way into marketing. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, I'm making not a lot of money. Yeah. So I got to figure something out. And he was my driving force. Like, I more than doubled my income in 1 year just because I did research on what kind of certifications in marketing I should get. Like, how can I make myself marketable as somebody who has no real experience, right? So so I did a ton of research and hunkered down on like, how do I self-educate? What resources are out there? And it was like pedal to the metal, because it was like, it's not just about me anymore. Like, I've got this small human that needs care. And unfortunately, my son's father, he was in the program as well. And he relapsed while I was pregnant, ended up getting very ill. He has since passed on, but I knew I would be doing it alone. Right. I was like, I can't rely on this person. So it's me. And all right, little buddy, we're going to figure it out. We're going to learn all this together. But I had to make some big choices, right? And like figure out what was most important to me and go, okay, where I'm at right now, I'm not going to be able to take care of a small human. So how can I empower myself? And I sought out mentors. I mean, and it was humbling, right? To go out there and you get asked like, well, what's your background? And it's like, well, not what you're looking for, but I promise you, I work hard and I'll take on anything. I'm always eager to learn. So that was the big shift for me.
Wow. When suddenly there was actually something at stake, and suddenly you find yourself in a new role, on a new mission, so to speak. Right. And this mission was worth it for you. And that is the beautiful thing, when we actually come up with a purpose in our life, the why, and you figure that out. You figure that you became hungry for the right things. And that is cool. Now, the next pitfall that there is, you go pedal to the metal. That's right, because we're going to go all out as addicts. We want it now. Did you become a workaholic?
100%. Are you kidding? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Aren't we just crazy? Are we not crazy?
But it's always so great to meet a kindred spirit who gets it, that it's like, yeah, this is what happened. Like, and like when you were talking about the why, right? What I figured out about myself, and it took me a long time to figure this out, is that me being the why was never enough. And I know that relates a lot back to the trauma. It relates back to the shame. It relates back to, literally feeling like a disposable piece of meat for a period of time. That was really hard to come out of. But, here, I could never do it for myself, but thank God for my son, who it was like, okay, I can do it for you. I will always do it for you. So I have to always remember that like, I'm still working on therapy, on self-compassion, and going, I'm enough of a reason, but it's really hard for me to do because of all that baggage, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'll be a work in progress forever. It's okay.
Oh, please. That makes two of us. God. And you go through these waves, and sometimes you're really good, and sometimes you just fall back into your old habits. And not necessarily that you have got a relapse, but this is when you look at relapsing, there is a long time before you actually pick up or shoot up or whatever you do. It's the emotional building up to it. You're not looking after yourself. Stress from external sources piles up on you. And sooner or later, oh, hello, my dear old friend.
Yeah,
whatever that friend is.
Right. So, well, and for me with the self-care, I still have such a hard time with it. Like I'm not joking with you, on my work calendar, because self-proclaimed workaholic, I have scheduled time of like self-care.
Good.
This is your self-care time. And because I will follow my calendar to a T. And so when it's like self-care, I'm like, okay, I should go meditate for a little bit. Like, okay, calendar, I'll listen to the calendar.
I need to do that. I so need to do that.
It's so valuable.
Oh, please. Yes. No, I mean, it is, I'm actually putting the time in, but I certainly could do more. I try to get 30 minutes of exercise dotted over the day. So that's good. And I am fiercely defensive for my sleep. So I will nowadays I cherish my sleep because for so long with the PTSD and with your waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, bing, and you get the worst of Stephan of the last 40 years runs in front of you. And you just think, oh, fuck off. No, not again. Yes, I treated that girl badly when I was 18, for crying out loud. That is how many decades ago? But you still get the physical response. Do you get physical responses? How does an anxiety attack actually work out for you?
Ooh, anxiety attacks are rough for me. And I struggle a lot with anxiety now. And it's which is why my self-care is scheduled, because I know if I'm taking care of myself that those are going to be less frequent. And so when I can always feel when an anxiety attack is coming on, because, you know, obviously there's like the muscles that lock up and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's light. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I got to turn the lights off in here. Like my eyes hurt. And that's like my big flashing, like, hey, take a break. You need to sit down and breathe or do something, or this is going to get bad.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It's nearly like a migraine aura. Interesting.
Yeah.
So very physical responsiveness. I mean, your sympathetic nervous system is going, well, yes, you can imagine it. Why is the light so bright? Because your sympathetic nervous system is throwing out the adrenaline. Your eyes go white and your pupils. And so that whatever light there is, you think, interesting. How cool is that?
And even like the littlest stress, I can, you know, like I was telling you, when I get really stressed, I feel it in my hips.
Yeah.
So what's really bizarre is like the human body is so cool. I get like, this stuff is so exciting to me, and just really like listening to my body. It's like, wow, amazing. So when I get work stress, it's in my jaw and in my neck. And when it's like relationship stress, whether that's romantic, friendship, whatever, that's when I'll feel it like in my hips and in my legs. And so it's like where the tension is on my body, I can go, wait a minute, I know this. And I know that this means this for me. It's wild. It's so interesting. But that's, you know, many, many years of learning how to sit in those feelings. Right? Which is like the hardest thing in the world. When you have those feelings, you just go stop and lean into it. It's like, I don't want to lean into it. I want to go distract myself. I have many emails to send at work. I don't have time for this.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's so scary because here your mouth is opening and my words are coming out because I feel exactly the same. It is, oh my goodness. Goodness. Wow. I mean, here you are nowadays. You have got all these insights, and you have decided to come out, so to speak. You're open. You're an open book to people who want to know more about you. Where do you see yourself in a year's time, 2 years' time? I mean, we are all on this path of becoming maybe better human beings, on this path of still healing, of this path of healing from new trauma. I mean, the last 3 years were bitches. Wherever you look, no one had a good time. So whilst we are developing, who do you want to be?
Oh, man, that's a big question.
I know.
I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing for dinner tonight.
Okay.
No. But I can answer that. Though. So let me back us up a little bit, because I, you know, in the spirit of like, I'm always self-educating, always seeking out, you know, ways to be better at, whether it's my job, whether it's my therapy, whatever it is. I'm like, I just soak up, like, give me all the information. So I was doing a course through UGA, which is a college out here in Atlanta. And part of this whole program was like, create a website, right? And I'd created websites before, but it was like, you had to like do it a certain way with the right SEO, all these kinds of things. And so when I was doing it, I'm like, God, I've always kicked around this idea of one day starting a nonprofit. And I'm like, so, here's what I'll do. I'll do it based on that. And then when the program's done, I'll just get rid of it. Like, because that's years down the road. That's the retirement plan. So we're not going there yet. But the more research I did just for creating this website, it was like, and the website, by the way, is butwhatisnext.com. But what ended up happening is, I'm digging up like the numbers on the latest statistics on human trafficking and how staggering and volatile those numbers are. And I'm like doing more research just here in my city in Atlanta. And I'm like, God, we're a hub for it out here. And it was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. I'm just going to kind of keep pushing this forward. Maybe we tried this. Maybe I tried this. And what I discovered is like, I can have my day job and I can also start something really big that can help other people. And now the tricky part is that work-life balance, that self-care piece. But I'm so passionate about helping others. And it's just kind of evolved into this thing now where I'm working on my 501c3 status to become like taxman recognized as a nonprofit. And, it's my hope is that every person who has gone through trauma and recovery and whatever your journey looks like, that like, you mentioned it earlier that, I got out of treatment or I came out to Georgia, I think is what it was. And it was like, well, the story is just beginning. And it's like, you see in the movies, like, okay, well, look, they accepted the help, right? We've all watched Intervention. Oh, they got on the plane. They're going to be fine. And it's like, no, because then you've got these people who go, okay, well, what's next? I don't like, now what? What do I do? Like,
exactly.
Great. Yeah. I got sober, but like,
now what?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's where my heart is. And, when
I got goosebumps, actually, you just describing that because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. What's next? And this is where the answer lies. This is where a new plant grows out of the snow in the spring.
Yes.
And that is beautiful. So what's the color of your flower leaves?
Yeah. So, I mean, this for me is what's next, right? Like giving back, because
beautiful. And
it was, let me tell you, because of the shame around my experience with being trafficked, addiction, like, you can't help but feel like just hopeless and horrible about yourself. And especially the trafficking, I held so close to my chest. Like nobody needed to know, because what would people think, right? And especially dating, what will people think when they hear about that? Like, you can't help but believe that you're damaged goods. And it's like, I know now today that I am not, but it's a core belief that I've had to fight with everything that I've got. And it's, oh gosh, I lost the point of where I was going, and it was going to be so good. I got held up on damaged goods.
No. And that is normal. That is normal, because we're going to go, that is how powerful our memories can sometimes be. And just interject. But you are on a trajectory towards doing an NGO. You are going out there to make this world a better place.
Yes. And I just remembered where I was going with what I was saying about just sharing my personal story, right? That it is such a horrific cliche of, one of the things, and I'm going to be honest with you, when I first came out to Georgia, I was not aware that I was trafficked, if that makes sense. Because in my head, I was like, well, that doesn't happen to people like me, right? Like middle class, Southern California, parents are still together in love. Like that doesn't happen to people like me. And it wasn't until, when I came out to Georgia, I had to meet with law enforcement met with law enforcement for a long time after all this happened. But it wasn't until I was with law enforcement and they described it as trafficking. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, but me? And, you know, because I think in my head, I didn't know how else to reconcile what had happened to me. I just knew it sucked.
Sure.
But that was a tricky thing to come to. And so putting myself out there and sharing my story, it was scary. So I published a book last year, and it details, you know, my journey. And the whole point is to support the nonprofit, right? Of like, hey, you can find your successful you can determine what you want out of life, like figure out your dream career. And like, hey, if you want to do that, here's the steps that I took. Here's what I did. I am your case study. Like, I did it. It worked for me. It might work for you. But I had to make a big decision of how much of my story I put in there. And I had one of my friends proofread it, and I like really skimmed over it. Okay. Initially it was like, oh, and this happened, and now we move on. But they were like, that your story is a book in and of itself. You have to give more credence to that. And you have to show that, like, you know what you're talking about because you've been to hell and back. And so writing those first couple of chapters and incorporating my experience throughout the book was really hard emotionally to revisit that. I had to really move slow as I was writing and go, really pay attention to, like, how am I feeling? You know, like you talked about those nights where you wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, am I really going to put this out there? Like, ooh. But you know, I wrote it, and when I published it, it was like, okay, it's out there, no turning back. And I'll never forget when my company, like my day job company, they were like, we found out that you wrote a book. Okay, so here's what they did. They're so sweet. But we operate a couple of different online media publications. And so on one of them, I go to our site and there are banners promoting me and my book all over it.
I love
and
it.
I'm like,
love it.
Well, but here's the thing is I'm like, I know none of them have read it. And so I'm like, do they know?
No. I'm sure. No. They will have read it.
But
there will be
now
one person. That's right. There will be one person for sure there.
Yes. And many of my coworkers did read it and were very sweet. And they were like, I never would have guessed, right? Like, you're so positive and like, so happy little ray of sunshine. And I always explain to them that, like, yeah, I'm extremely happy and extremely grateful, because in my mind, the fact that I'm here is like, oh my God, I'm so good. I'm so good.
Exactly.
Like, I'm walking around. I'm okay. Every day is a good day.
But that is the gift that we get from trauma. That is the opportunity. We don't take life for granted. We take every second that we are given as a choice, as a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly nowadays live far more intentional.
Yes.
And that is actually really, really beautiful. It's interesting because I am changing. I don't suffer fools lightly. So the worst thing you can do to me is actually put me in a room with boring people, and I just have to be there to do small talk. I'm dying. No, this is wasted time. I could do something for myself. I could do something for others. I don't know what I could do, but this is just painful. So maybe I'm becoming a grumpy old man.
No, but you see, this is why you're so good at your podcast, right? You're a great host. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And it's because you're like, okay, there's something to pull out of everybody. And we've all got our own unique experiences. And what's so funny is, like, think about how different we are. We were literally on, like, opposite ends of the planet. And yet we get each other, right? Yeah. Like
scarily so.
Scarily. But you're doing something with that energy and that creativity. And like you said, living really intentionally. And, you know, I try every day to write a gratitude list. It usually doesn't happen every day, but when I do, I have to tell you that my trauma makes the list, because I'm like, I think back to, like I was telling you, the person that I was, like, I am somebody, look at me. And I'm not that person anymore. And like, yes, it's like, hey, listen to me because I have a story to tell and you might know somebody who I can help.
Yeah.
Like it's a vast difference in how I view myself and the people around me and the world around me. And I'm like, none of that would have happened if my life didn't take the path that it did. As weird as that sounds, like,
Beautiful.
okay, I'm grateful for my trauma. It would have been great if it didn't happen, but it did. And
it is behind. See that you are the 381st guest I had on my show.
Wow.
I cannot remember anyone who said, yes, I would not like my trauma to not have happened. It's virtually everyone. If you ask them either on record or off the show, hey, look, if you could go back, would you change it? I cannot remember anyone who said, yes, I would completely wipe it out, because the people that we were when the trauma happened to us, they were often not the nicest people, and they were so different people compared with the person who you are now. This ray of sunshine that you are now, you're not an obnoxious ray. You are just you're just actually that kind of candle in the darkness for someone else. You are the girl that says hello to someone, and this person was maybe in some dark thoughts, and the sheer fact that you said hello with a smile made their day. I bet you are a woman who treats the cleaner better than the CEO. And
always.
Exactly. So exactly, I'm the same, and that is what makes us different. We are choosing to live our life intentional and to make this best out of these precious seconds here on Earth. And therefore, it's beautiful. So please don't stop. Please keep going in the beautiful work that you're doing. And no doubt, this will be like a snowball throwing down a steep incline that turns into an avalanche.
I hope so.
Well, exactly right. Sarah, if people want to try to find you and go to you, where shall they go?
So you can go to the website, butwhatisnext.com, or you can find me on Instagram. I don't really frequent any other social media platforms,
Fantastic.
But on Instagram, there is the But What Is Next page, which is, it's a mouthful, but.what.is.next.
Okay.
But What Is Next was already taken.
Oh, I see what you say. Oh, cool. So guys,
had to get creative.
Look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast, and all the information is there. You just need to click on it, and what have you got to lose? Come on, guys, explore Sarah's work, support her, maybe support us by clicking the like and subscribe button, and maybe tell your friends and forward a link on the various social media channels to my show and to this episode. I had a ball of a time, Sarah.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I think if we just keep going, we can't change the world. We can't change the war in the Ukraine. We can't change any other huge challenges, but we can change how we behave and how we model maybe a healthier life to the people around us. And with that, we become beacons of hope. And I think that is the legacy that I want to leave on this earth, that I never gave up. And warts and all, it's me, but I try to make the best out of it. And I know you are doing the same. Yeah. So thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
Thank you. This has been a blast.
And you guys out there, come on, go out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Okay. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.